Welcome to the ITAD Talk podcast and part 3 in this series.
We need to set some definitions and standards. Unfortunately, when people talk about carbon neutrality, and this is coming up this week as well, not everybody says the same thing. They use the same words, different meanings.
Gotcha.
And so we really need to start thinking about what those definitions are, particularly as it relates to a data center, and it relates to the standards. Just because you have bought renewable energy to drive your systems doesn't mean that you as a company have done anything to address some of the other issues, right? They break these down into scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 capabilities, which is a whole nother area to talk about. But they basically say, yeah, that's great that you're buying good stuff that's
energy efficient.
But what are you specifically doing, right? And unless they're doing something about their data centers, they're missing the boat. Right now, data centers represent only about 2% of all the carbon emissions worldwide. But if people clean up the other areas as they're projected, if the data center people don't do anything, they will be at 10 to 12% by 2030 and greater than 30% by 3050. And at some point, that nail is going to be visible, and people are going to want to hit them over the head with it. So, companies need to do something, and we are in the process of lining up members to participate in our working groups as we pour through all of this.
Right. Hey, another question I want to ask you, since you've got such a great history of experience and everything. When you were learning all these skill sets, was there someone who helped you and helped mentor you and kind of taught you some of these skill sets? And then in turn, have you been able to mentor others with some of your knowledge?
There was one individual that I learned a lot from through the years. He was my boss back at IBM for a good number of years, and I followed him around for a while. What he was excellent in was planning and then executing against the plan. And that really tends to be the key. What I find, there are people who are great planners and there are people who are great executors. But for companies to succeed over the years, you really need to do both. One of the things that we're doing today, when you ask about mentoring, I'm not mentoring individuals per se. I was for a while. The way I'm doing it now is that we are still running the bi-weekly video conferences, and we have expanded that to about 100 firms that we're working with, mostly still financial services, but companies that have the need to address high availability, high performance, scalability, and security and compliance are firms that we're still working with. And our discussions really get into getting people to understand what's happening. They're very frank. We use Chatham House rule, so people say what's on their mind. As someone once said, it's like an AA meeting. They'll tell you what really is, not what you normally hear at webinars and video conferences and stuff. You hear the reality of what's going on. And so if you really want good market intelligence and you really want to understand what's happening and build relationships with highly talented people are welcome to join our biweekly video conferences, as long as they fit the personas that we're talking about here with that type of stuff. The types of areas we still talk about are cloud edge, data centers, all the infrastructure stuff, security, compliance, and risk, data architecture, data ops, AI, ML, and digital transformation. So these are the things that we've always been doing and I've always been involved with. And it's open for people to learn. It's an hour a week, an hour every other week. And it gives people an opportunity to hear what some of the best minds are thinking about.
Well, it sounds like a really important group that can help kind of let people know what's really going on and what challenges that might need to be worked on for the organization. So you mentioned planning and executing. Can you give us maybe just a couple thoughts for, we've got a lot of, smaller firms and ITAD companies that are building and, they're always planning and executing and growing. And so any tips on those 2 points on planning and the execution?
So, yeah, there's 2 things to keep in mind. One is that the planning and execution is really a cycle. It's not a straight line. You plan, and then you act, and then you monitor it, and then you reshape your plan and you re-execute. So it's a circle as you go through here. One of the things that used to be a challenge for me personally was that when you would sit there as an executive and you would say, well, here are my goals. How do you know you're reaching your goals in many of the cases? Because the goal itself may be number of sales or revenue stream or some other major element, when you can't measure that on a weekly basis, right? That may occur
Right.
once a month or once a quarter. So how do you know your plan is really being executed the way you want if you can't see your ultimate goal? And the point I would make is there are a lot of individual goals that go into that are not specifically those business objectives that you constantly report on. For example, number of calls or number of hot prospects or whatever measurement you do, that can be measured on a daily and weekly basis. Is it gaining? Is it losing? How's that going? And that's something you can measure so you can see whether your plan is driving towards your goal.
So would you refer to those as kind of like the leading or lagging indicators?
I would call them they're the leading indicators, right? If you knew, for example, that for every sale that you were going to do, you needed to talk to 50 accounts, then if your guys are only talking to 10 accounts a week, you may not meet your numbers, right? So you may be looking at, well, how many calls do they need to make per day of just plain cold calling to equal warm calls and qualified accounts and then potential sales and then actual sales, right? That's a funnel that you're driving down. And how are you meeting those numbers so that you can effectively get to your real metric that you're going to report upwards to the executives and owners and all of that stuff. So that's a key element that people need to work on. From a project standpoint, the same thing is true. You find executives that or developers get so locked into their project, they're too busy fighting the alligators to drain the swamp, and they don't even realize they're not doing it.
Wow.
And we found when we measure those, what you really need is somebody from the outside, another project manager who's familiar with doing that stuff, one of your better ones in the corporation, to come in and understand the project. It has to be viewed as a peer helping a peer, not adversarial in any way, shape, or form, because you really need to find out what are the real problems that can now be brought up to some executive who can resolve the issues that you've been struggling with within the project that can't be solved within the project but need some senior executive to leap in and provide added funding, direction, or whatever it may be.
Great. Well, those are really great points. I appreciate you spending a little bit of time on that. Is there anything else that you think we haven't covered that you think that you would like to add?
I think we've hit all the major points that are top of mind at the moment.
Hey, just on a personal basis, where is it that you're based out of, and what kinds of things do you like to do for fun? I know a lot of us have kind of been, at home more than we may want with the COVID and everything. But are you able to get back out and do a few things now?
So I'm in Connecticut, in a small town called Wilton in Fairfield County, and yeah, we've been isolated here, so to speak, since March of 2020. We are getting out a little bit, doing that. We have not had any face-to-face meetings with people. Everything's been Zoom-based, more or less. And so that's how we've been doing that for fun. I have a dog that I love to play with all the time and walk and all that stuff. So that keeps me happy and satisfied on the non-business side.
Great. Well, Cal, I want to thank you for your time this morning, and you've definitely got a really long history and range of experience that's seems to be at a critical point right now with the data center and the COP26 and some of these points in the PUE and some of the things that you had brought out that are needed as the data center technology moves forward. So we thank you for bringing that out. And I was kind of there watching as Lou Gerstner's team was working on reshaping the company, and that was a really impressive endeavor that he ended up doing along with yourself and the rest of the team, because it's not easy to move an organization like that and change it. So anyway, really appreciate all the input that in the stories that you've given us this morning, and we'll look forward to speaking to you in the future.
My pleasure, and anyone who wants to reach out to me via LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect with them, or if they want to participate in any of the things that we're doing, just let me know.
Thanks again for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe anywhere you listen.